She was broken and forgotten until one human defied the stars to rescue her. The auction floor smelled like sweat dust and old blood. A large crowd of aliens gathered under the burning sun, their eyes filled with greed, shouting, bidding, and laughter. Echoed from every corner, in the center of it all sat a girl. She was thin, too thin. Her skin, once a soft purple, was now dull and bruised. Her black hair was tangled and full of dirt flies landed on her face, her arms, and even her cracked lips. But she didn't move. She didn't even blink. Her name was Carrie, though no one here cared to ask. She sat on the hot metal floor, chained by the wrists and ankles. She had been here for hours or maybe days. Time no longer mattered. Her eyes stared at the dirt half, closed, waiting for nothing. The auctioneer, a fat alien with 4 eyes and gold teeth, stood beside her, waving his arms. 100 credits, no fine, 50. Come on, she eats very little. The crowd laughed. She looks broken, someone shouted. Not even worth cleaning, said another. Still Noon stepped forward. Carrie had been sold many times before. Each time she was returned defective, they called her too quiet, too slow, useless. Now no one wanted her, not even for free. Then, from the back of the crowd, a man walked forward. He was tall, covered in dust, and wore an old brown coat. A human, his face was plain, his eyes tired but kind. His name was Eli, though no one here cared either. The auctioneer laughed when he saw him. You, again looking for spare parts? Eli didn't answer. His eyes were fixed on the girl. Carrie didn't notice him at first. She thought it was just another person come to laugh, another set of eyes to judge her. But then she heard something strange. Silence. The crowd stopped mocking. She looked up and saw Ella standing in front of her, quietly studying her face. Not with disgust, not with pity, just looking. She's dying. The auctioneer said, barely. Breathing. Probably sick. But hey, you want her? I'll give her, for 10. Eli didn't speak. He took out a small pouch from his coat and placed it on the table. The metal coins inside clinked softly. 10. The auctioneer asked. Eli shook his head. No, I'll pay full price. The crowd gasped. Some laughed again. You're crazy, someone shouted. She's not worth that. But Eli ignored them all. He stepped toward Carrie and slowly knelt down. Car's body trembled. She pulled back slightly, expecting a slap, a kick, a command. Instead, Eli pulled out a clean cloth and gently wiped the flies from her face. You don't belong here, he said softly. She stared at him, confused. No one had spoken to her like that in years. Not like a thing, not like garbage, but like a person. The auctioneer grumbled and unchained her wrists. Don't blame me if she drops dead before morning. Eli picked her up carefully. She was light as a feather. She didn't resist. He wrapped his coat around her and walked through the crowd. No one stopped him. No one wanted her anyway. As they reached the edge of the auction lot, Carrie finally whispered, Why? Eli looked down. Because you were left like trash. But I see something else. She didn't understand, but her eyes closed, and for the first time in a long time she slept. Later that night, Eli placed her gently on a clean bed in a small, quiet room above his workshop. He didn't chain her. He didn't lock the door. He just brought her warm soup and sat nearby waiting. She opened her eyes once just to make sure it wasn't a trick. He was still there. No weapons, no orders, just him quiet, watching her like she mattered. She didn't eat the soup. Not yet, but she didn't throw it away either. She simply held the bowl in her small hands and let a tear fall into it. Outside, the auction floor was empty now. The chains she once wore lay on the ground. But Carrie wasn't there anymore. She had been seen, and someone had finally paid, not for her body, but for her worth. The room was small and quiet. A single lamp flickered in the corner. The walls were lined with shelves of tools, old wires, and half-repaired machines. It smelled like oil metal and something soft like warmth. Carrie lay on a bed that felt too soft to be real. Her arms rested beside her, not chained. Her legs were free. She blinked slowly, unsure if this was a dream or a trap. The human had not returned. She sat up carefully, expecting to be shouted at, but no voice came, no pain. Just the sound of wind outside the window. Her body ached. Her hands were shaking. She saw a tray near the bed, a bowl of soup, a piece of bread, and a small folded towel. Everything was clean, too clean. She looked at her own skin, still dirty, still covered in old bruises and dried blood. Why would he feed something like her downstairs? Eli worked quietly on a broken power coil. Sparks flew as he adjusted a wire. The shop was quiet except for the soft hum of his tools. He hadn't heard her speak again since that one word at the auction. Why, he didn't expect thanks. He didn't need her to trust him. He just wanted to give her space to breathe, to heal. He didn't know her full story, but he could see the signs. The flinch when footsteps came near. The way she avoided mirrors. The silence so deep it screamed he didn't ask questions. He only waited upstairs. Kari stood slowly and walked to the mirror near the wash basin. The girl staring back at her didn't look alive. Her eyes were sunken. Her lips cracked. Her hair looked like it hadn't been washed in months. She didn't recognize herself. Her hands reached for the towel, then stopped. If this was a test, if she used something without permission, there would be punishment. She had learned that before she stood still. For a long time, Eli climbed the stairs slowly and knocked on the doorframe. Kari jumped and turned sharply. Her eyes were wide like a cornered animal. "I brought clean clothes," he said gently, placing a folded set on the table. She didn't speak. She just stared. He nodded and turned to leave, but stopped in the doorway. "Kari," he said softly, using her name for the first time. "You don't owe me anything. You're not a slave. Here you're not a thing." Her lip trembled. Hez smiled once, just a small one, and walked away. Later that night, Kari stepped out of the room wearing the clean clothes. They were loose but soft. She had washed her face. Her skin looked brighter now, but her eyes were still heavy. Eli was sitting on a chair reading a datapad. He looked up, then quickly looked down again, not wanting to scare her. She stood for a moment, then walked to the corner of the room and sat on the floor. Not the couch, not the chair, just the floor. That was what she was used to. Eli said nothing. He slid a second bowl of soup toward her. No words, no pressure. She took it, ate it slowly. The days passed like this. Eli worked in the shop, fixed machines, ate simple meals, and always made sure there was a bowl for her. Kari stayed quiet but watched him closely. He never yelled. Never struck her. He laughed sometimes, not loud but soft. The kind of laugh that didn't hurt anyone. One day she accidentally dropped a tool while handing it to him. It hit the floor with a sharp clang. She froze. Eli turned and saw her shaking. She had curled into herself like she expected a blow, but he simply bent down, picked up the tool, and placed it back. "Next time, maybe hand it to me gently," he said with a grin. Kari blinked. Her lips parted slightly. Her first sound in days came out. "Sorry," he smiled. "That's okay." That night, Kari did not eat on the floor. She sat at the table, still quiet, still unsure. But something was changing. Before bed, Eli brought out an old music player. He placed it on the table and pressed a button. A soft, slow tune filled the room. Not loud, not sharp, just a gentle hum like a memory floating through the air. Kari stared at the machine. Her fingers slowly reached out and touched it. "What is this?" she asked. Eli's eyes lit up. "Music you've never heard it?" She shook her head. "Well," he said, "there's a lot I want to show you." That night, Kari slept deeply. No chains, no fear, just the quiet hum of music still playing in the corner, and a human who saw her not as Strash, but as someone worth saving. The morning light crept into the small workshop room through dusty windows. Outside, the sky was pale orange. A slow wind moved across the dry ground. Inside, Kari sat at the table, both hands wrapped around a warm cup. It wasn't tea, just boiled water, but it was warm, and at washers, Eli worked at the repair bench across the room. He didn't speak much, he just fixed things, wires, gears, old engines, broken tech. Kari watched him. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not like before. 2 days ago, she wouldn't meet his eyes. Now she did not for long, but for a moment he noticed. You want to help? He asked. Not looking up, Carrie froze. She had never been asked anything before. Slowly she nodded. Elis Miled. He handed her a small tool. Hold this steady. Not too tight, she did. Her fingers shook a little, but she held the piece in place while he soldered the wires. There we go, he said when it sparked to life. Good hands. Carrie looked at her own fingers. Burned, scarred, thin, but useful, good. She whispered to herself. That afternoon, a delivery drone dropped. Parts. Outside the shop, Eli waved at the pilot. Thanks, Curry followed him out. Thiessen was hot, but the wind was soft. For a moment, she tilted her head up, letting it touch her face. She had never done that before. You okay? Eli asked. She nodded. It feels real. Back inside, she helped him organize parts. She was quick, careful, and quiet. At one point, a wrench slipped from the shelf and hit the floor hard. The loud sound echoed. Carrie gasped and stepped back, arms raised to cover her head. Eli turned fast, confused. But then he understood. He didn't go to her. He didn't speak right away. He simply knelt, picked up the wrench, and placed it back. Then he looked at her and said, It's okay. You're not in danger here. Her arms dropped slowly. I thought you'd be angry. She said, I get angry at machines. Eli replied, smiling gently, not at people. That night she asked for a second blanket, not because she was cold, but because she wanted to sleep on the floor again. Near the music player, Eli nodded. Wherever you feel safe, he didn't push her to change, he just let her heal her way. The next day, something strange happened. A child. An alien boy with blue skin and 3 eyes ran into the shop. Eli, my hoverboard broke. Again, Eli laughed. Because you jump off roofs with it, Toma. Toma smiled, then noticed Kari. He waved. Hikari stepped back, unsure. Eli said, I Curry, this is Toma. He comes here often to break things. Toma laughed. And you fix them. Carrie didn't know what to say. Noon, her age, had ever spoken to her kindly. Toma didn't stare or ask questions. He just sat on a crate and waited. Later, as Eli fixed the board, Carrie asked, Why is he not afraid of me? Eli looked at her. Because there's no reason to be. That evening, Carrie walked through the shop alone. She touched tools carefully like they were made of glass. In the corner, she saw a cracked mirror. Her reflection was better now, cleaner, brighter. Her hair was washed, her eyes clearer. She didn't look like a slave anymore. She looked alive. Before bed, she brought Eli a small cloth she had cleaned. You dropped this, she said. Eli took it. Thank you. He paused, then asked, Can I ask something? Carrie nodded. Do you remember your parents? She looked down. Not really, I was taken when I was small. They called me a returned product. Eli said nothing. He simply sat. Beside her on the bench, Carrie looked up at him. But you treat me like I'm someone you are, he said. She asked, voice soft, what? Someone. He didn't answer at first. Then finally he said, Kari, that's enough. She turned her face away so he wouldn't see the tears in her eyes, but he knew. And for the first time in her life, those tears didn't come from pain. They came from being seen. The sun was setting behind the rust-cold hills. The wind blew softly across the old buildings, and the workshop glowed with warm yellow light. Inside, Kari was sweeping the floor. She wasn't told to do it. She just wanted to help. Each day she felt stronger. Less like a ghost and more like a real girl. Eli sat at the workbench fixing a broken radio. The room was calm, peaceful. Then came a knock. It was hard, sharp, not like the soft tapping of a customer. Carrie froze. Her hands tightened around the broom. Her breath stopped. Eli looked up. He felt it too. Something was wrong. He opened the door slowly. Outside stood a tall alien with greasy skin, a wide mouth and metal rings. In his nose, 2 armed guards stood behind him. Kai peeked through the side curtain. Her blood ran cold. It was the dealer, the one who used to own her Theon, who sold her like trash. Long time human, the dealer said with a smirk. Got something that Belongs to me. Eli didn't move. No, you don't. Oh, I do, little purple thing with big eyes. She's registered to my name. She's not yours. Eli said. His voice was calm but firm. The dealer held up a data chip. Proof trade contract. Her sale was reversed. She's still mine. By law, Eli crossed his arms. She's not property. She is my property, the dealer snapped, and you're harboring stolen goods. Carr's legs shook. She backed away from the window, heart pounding. The walls felt smaller, the air thinner. She whispered, "He's going to take me." Ella stepped out and closed the door behind him. "You came all this way just to make threats?" he asked. The guards stepped forward, rifles ready. "No threat," the dealer said. "Just business. You hand her over, or I take her by force." Eli stared at them. "You'll leave now?" The dealer grinned. "What'll you do, throw a wrench at us?" Inside, Kari was breathing fast. She crouched behind a cabinet, hands over her head, but then her eyes fell on something, the music player still playing, still calm. She stared at it, then at the soft bed, the warm lights, and her clean hands. This was her home now, and he wanted to rip it all away. Her fear turned into something else. Fire outside. The guards took a step forward. Eli didn't back down. "I'm giving you 5 seconds, he said. The dealer, laughter. What? Suddenly, boom, a bright flash exploded near the guards. Smoke filled the air. A loud crack rang out. Everyone ducked. Kari had thrown one of Eli's spark charges from the upper window. It hit the dirt beside the guards and burst into flames. The guards dropped their weapons and ran back. The dealer shouted, "What the hell?" Kari stepped outside, holding another charge in her hand. "I'm not yours," she yelled. The dealer turned in shock. "You little..." Eli stepped in front of her. "You heard her." For the first time, the dealer looked unsure. Eli took out his ID chip and tapped it against the dealer's. "I'm filing a protection claim. You try anything again and your name's going on the intergalactic abuse list. You wouldn't dare," the dealer spat. Eli stepped closer. "I already did." A soft beep came from the chip. "Confirmation sent." The dealer's eyes narrowed. "You're going to regret this." Eli stared him down. "No, you are." The dealer turned, growling. His guards picked up their rifles and hurried behind him. As their ship roared off into the night sky, silence returned. Kari stood beside Eli, her hands shaking, but she didn't drop the charge. Not this time. Eli looked at her and smiled. That was brave. Her voice was low but steady. "I don't want to run anymore." "You won't," he said. "Not while I'm here." She looked at the stars above, then back at the shop. It was still standing. She was still free. This time she had chosen to fight, and that changed everything. The stars outside blinked gently in the black sky. Inside the shop, all was quiet again. The dealer was gone, and the door was locked tight. Kari sat at the workbench, staring at a broken circuit board. Eli watched her from across the room. Not saying a word, she had stood tall that evening, thrown a charge spoken loudly, faced her fear. But now she looked tired, like her fire had faded and left behind cold ashes. Eli walked over and set a steaming cup next to her. "You okay?" Kai nodded slowly. "I'm not afraid of him anymore. I'm just tired of being afraid." Eli smiled softly. "Then you're healing." The next morning, Kari rose early. She stepped into the shop before Eli. The place was messy from last night. Scattered tools, broken parts, dust everywhere. She grabbed a cloth and began cleaning quietly. Then her eyes landed on an old device sitting in the corner. It was small, round, and half covered in rust. She picked it up and turned it over in her hands. The tag read, "Energy Core Stabilizer broken beyond repair. Charismald. We'll see." Eli entered an hour later and paused. Kari was hunched over the stabilizer tools all around her. She had already cleaned the inside, rewired 2 circuits, and had a data tablet open beside her with notes. He walked closer. "Where'd you learn that?" Kari didn't look up. "I used to sit near the tech room in the slave ship. I wasn't allowed inside, but I listened." Eli leaned on the table, impressed. "Well, you listened real well." Kari glanced at him. Just a hint of pride on her face. "Can I fix it? You're halfway there already." By noon, the stabilizer blinked green, fully functional. Eli picked it up and turned it in his hands. I've had this for a year. Couldn't even get it to turn on. Kai wiped grease from her fingers. Sometimes machines don't need force. They just need someone to understand them. Eli looked at her thoughtful. That's true for people too. Carrie didn't reply, but she smiled. A real smile. Word spread fast. That afternoon, a merchant stopped by. His delivery bot was frozen mid-cycle. Eli started to speak, but Carrie gently stepped forward. Can I try? The merchant looked unsure, but Eli nodded. Let her. 5 minutes later, the bot's eyes lit up and it rolled forward smoothly. The merchant blinked. How'd she know that? Eli chuckled. She listens. The merchant handed her a silver coin. You ever want a job, you come find me. Carrie held the coin like it was treasure, not because of its value, but because it was the first thing she had ever earned. Each day, Carrie fixed something new, a communication unit, a heating vent. Even a voice recorder with cracked audio. Customers began asking for her by name. Is Carrie? In today, Kay's hands are better, for small parts. She fixed my unit in half the time. Eli watched it all with quiet pride. He didn't push her forward. She stepped into the light on her own. One evening, as they closed up, Carrie stood in the doorway, watching. The stars. Eli joined her, thinking. She nodded. I used to think I was useless, that I was just a mistake. He looked at her. And now I still get scared, but I also feel strong. Like I matter. You do. She looked down. You gave me a place to heal. Eli shook his head. You fixed more than machines, Carrie. You fixed the shop, you fixed me. She turned to him. You were broken. Eli smiled sadly. Lonely is a kind of broken too. That night, Carrie returned to her bed. She placed the silver coin on her nightstand. Next to it, she added something new. Asmol gear from the stabilizer she had repaired, symbol of something she once thought impossible. A future outside under the night sky. The wind carried whispers of a new name. Not slave, not broken, not unwanted, engineer friend family. The heat was unbearable. Machines were shutting down all over the town. Power lines sparked. Screens blinked and died. The sky above the dusty planet had turned a strange shade of red, as if warning something was coming. Inside, Eli's shop fans had stopped spinning. The lights dimmed to nothing. Key stood near the window watching people run through the streets. Shouts echoed from every direction. Shut down. The port's backup power failed. The cooling systems are melting. Eli grabbed his tool bag. It's the main reactor, he said. Town grids failing. Carrie didn't hesitate. I'm going with you. They arrived at the town's energy center, an old steel bunker buried into the hill. The entrance was blocked by smoke and scared workers. It's too hot inside, one shouted. No one can. Go near the core. Another man added, the regulators are overloaded. If the system burns, we lose everything. Water, power lights, oxygen. Everyone looked around, hopeless. Then a familiar voice said, let me try. The crowd turned. It was Kari. A woman stepped forward, frowning. You the auction girl? She's the one who fixed my delivery drone, said a merchant. She repaired my home heater in 2 minutes. Someone else added, she was left for flies. Another muttered, now you're saying she can save the town? Eli stepped beside her. She doesn't need to prove anything. She's already done more than most of you. Kari didn't wait for permission. She walked straight into the bunker. The heat inside was like fire in the lungs. Sparks burst from the walls. Warning lights flashed red. The air was thick and heavy. One wrong move could cause an explosion. Kari wiped her face with a cloth and moved deeper. The power core was huge, humming wildly. Glowing hot, she dropped to her knees and opened the main panel. Circuits burned. One entire section was blackened. The safety line had melted. The system was seconds from collapse, but Kari didn't panic. She had seen worse, lived through worse. Outside, the crowd waited. Some still doubted. Others watched in silence. Eli paced. The noise from inside suddenly stopped. Thena. New sound. Click, click. Where the fans turned on, lights blinked back to green and the reactor almed. Kari stepped out, her face covered in soot, hands black with grease but smiling. She did it. Someone shouted. A cheer rose from the crowd. A woman rushed forward. How did you know what to do? Kari looked. At her calmly, I listened. Where did you learn that? Kari glanced at Eli from the one who didn't throw me away. By evening the town was glowing again. Lights filled the streets. Children laughed. Music played. Kari sat on a bench outside the shop resting. One by one people came. They brought food tools, even gifts. Not because they felt sorry, but because they were thankful. A child handed her a small wooden pin. My mom says you're a hero. Kari took the pin gently. Her hand still shook from the heat earlier. I'm not a hero, she said softly. I'm just not invisible anymore. Eli sat beside her. You know, a few weeks ago no one saw you. They looked through you. Key nodded. And now they don't stop staring. They're not staring, Eli said. They're seeing. She looked down. At the wooden pin, it was carved into the shape of a gear. Simple, beautiful. They only saw my skin before she whispered, not theirest of me. Now they see your worth. That night, Kari placed the pin beside the silver coin and gear on her nightstand. Her hands brushed over them like sacred treasures. Not because they were valuable, but because each one told the same truth: she mattered. The girl they mocked, the girl they left, the girl they didn't want had become their hope. The market was crowded again. Same dust, same heat, same auction stage. But today it wasn't full of shouting or laughter, it was quiet. People stood still, waiting, watching. Something felt different. At the center stood Kari, but she wasn't chained. She wasn't dirty. She wasn't broken. Her chin was high, her clothes clean, her eyes calm. A metal pin shaped like a gear rested on her chest. It wasn't fancy, but everyone knew what it meant now. She had saved them, and now she'd returned to the place where they once left her to rot. Eli stood behind her, tools strapped to his belt just like always, but he didn't speak. This was her moment. Kari walked to the old auction stage and stepped onto it slowly. The wood creaked beneath her feet, just like it had the day she was sold for nothing. Turned to the crowd. I used to sit here, she said, voice steady. Chained, dirty, afraid. People looked down, embarrassed, silent. I remember the flies, she continued. They landed on my skin. No one else did. A child in the crowd whispered, Mama, is she the girl who fixed the lights? The mother nodded. Yes, dear. Kari kept speaking. You didn't want me. You saw nothing in me. She paused. Her voice softened, but one person did. She looked at Eli. He didn't try to own me. He didn't try to fix me. He just treated me like a person. From the back, the old auctioneer watched. His gold teeth didn't shine today. He looked tired. Small. Kara turned her eyes toward him. You said I was worthless. He said nothing. She smiled gently. You were wrong. She stepped down from the stage, walked across the dusty lot, and stopped at the very spot where she had once knelt with her head down and hands bound. She bent slowly and placed a flower, small, bright purple. Then she stood up again. I leave this here, she said, for the girl I used to be, the one no one saw. The crowd remained, silent, no doubt of disrespect but out of awe. Kari didn't cry, she didn't shout. She simply turned, took Eli's hand, and walked away. Later in the shop, they packed boxes. Their business was still running. But Kari had bigger dreams now. A nearby academy had offered her a full apprenticeship, said she could study real engineering, design machines no one had ever built. She accepted. I never thought I'd leave this place. She told Eli, you don't have to. He replied, this will always be home. She nodded, but now I want to see what else I can become. Before she left, she placed 3 items on the workshop shelf. The coin the merchant gave her. The gear from the first device she fixed, the wooden pin the child gifted her. Above them she placed a small tag, proof that I was always enough. The shuttle came at sunrise. Kari wore a clean jacket, tools at her side, and hope in her heart. The same crowd that once ignored her now gathered to wave goodbye. Even the auctioneer came. He didn't speak. He just nodded, ashamed maybe, but respectful. Key gave him a small nod back. Forgiveness didn't need words. Eli hugged her tightly. Proud doesn't even begin to cover it. She smiled. You saved me. You saved yourself, he said. I just opened the door. The ship's engines roared to life. Kari stepped aboard, heart pounding, not with fear but excitement. New stars, new cities, new stories, but no more cages, no more chains, no more silence. As the ship rose into the sky, Kawari looked down at the planet. Once a prison, now a memory, she whispered to herself. I was not for sale, I was waiting to be seen. And now the whole galaxy,